A small town, Ashbourne, becomes the arena for confrontation when a gang of menacing bikers known as the Steelhawks invades a local cafe. Standing against these events is a man with a dark past, a former Navy SEAL returning home after a long service. His deep spiritual and physical scars fuel his defiance as he challenges the gang, turning every moment into a tense battle between fear and courage. The intervention of not only the veteran, but also his newfound allies and the fate of the town promises that the choices made will reshape everyone's future. Intriguing tales from the elders and the youths strive to improve the town clash with the dark history of local conflicts. The dangers posed by the Steelhawks and the mysterious secrets lurking behind their facade threaten Ashbourne. Yet every resident of this town will find themselves drawn into the fight for their homeland, striving to restore justice. What is truly at stake, and what will be the cost of victory? In the gentle prelude of dawn, the town of Ashbourne lay embraced by a quiet grace. A soft, translucent light filtered through the ancient oaks and cast languid shadows upon the well-worn streets. At the heart of this serene tableau was a modest establishment known simply as Highland Grove, a small coffee haven nestled at the corner of Milner Avenue and the winding Riverbend Lane. Here, beneath a faded sign that bore the emblem of a rising sun, Ethan Cole began each day with a ritual of quiet contemplation and simple pleasure. Ethan, whose features bore the quiet strength of someone who had weathered storms far beyond the petty concerns of everyday life, had returned to Ashbourne after many years away. The scars that marred his skin and the subtle weariness in his eyes were the muted echoes of his service as a Navy SEAL. Though the memories of those tumultuous days in far-flung battlefields and clandestine operations lingered, he now sought solace in the familiar cadence of small-town rhythms. Each morning, as he sipped his meticulously brewed coffee, Ethan felt the tension of past conflicts ebb away into the slow passage of time, a quiet promise that healing could be found even in the smallest of rituals. On this particular morning, as the early light danced upon the dew-speckled pavement, Ethan settled into his favorite corner seat of Highland Grove. The air inside was perfumed with the rich aromas of roasted beans and freshly baked pastries, a contrast to the harsh metallic tang of his former life. The cafe was modest in its charm, adorned with hand-painted murals depicting scenes of Ashbourne's storied past, a humble nod to a history filled with both triumph and tribulation. Among the regular patrons was Marjorie, the proprietor, whose warm smile and attentive care lent the place an atmosphere of quiet refuge. It was during one such moment of solitary reflection that the subtle undercurrent of unease first rippled through the gentle hum of conversation. A pair of figures, unmistakably out of place in the tranquil embrace of Highland Grove, had just rolled through the narrow street outside in a pair of sleek black motorcycles. Their presence, exuding a raw and restless energy, served as an unintentional harbinger of the turbulence that was about to descend upon the sanctuary of Ashbourne. Although Ethan's gaze briefly drifted to the window, his countenance remained calm, as if he were silently measuring the weight of destiny with the same quiet deliberation that had once served him on perilous missions abroad. The Riders, part of a notorious group known in hushed tones as the Steel Raptors, were not unknown to the town. Their reputation was as hard-edged as the chrome that adorned their machines, and whispers of their activities had long circulated among the townsfolk. Yet, for all their imposing outward bravado, none could have anticipated that on this day their trajectory would collide with the quiet resolve of a man who had spent a lifetime preparing for moments just such as this. As the morning deepened and the cafe's interior filled with the murmurs of routine conversations and the clinking of ceramic cups, Ethan's mind drifted between past and present. His thoughts returned to the days when he had navigated dangerous urban labyrinths and uncharted deserts under the cloak of night. In those moments, every decision could mean life or death, and each heartbeat resonated with the cadence of imminent conflict. Now, as he sat amid the rustic comfort of Highland Grove, those memories mingled with the calm assurance of someone who had found peace in the steady rhythm of everyday life. Yet even in this place of solace, the promise of confrontation hovered like a distant storm cloud, waiting to be awakened by the stirring of fate. Outside, the sound of engines drew nearer, the steady rumble resonating with a purpose that belied its casual appearance. The steel raptors had arrived, their presence manifesting as a tangible shift in the atmosphere, a subtle, almost imperceptible tightening of the collective breath of those present. As the heavy door of the cafe swung open to admit them, a ripple of apprehension swept through the assembled patrons. The newcomers exuded a raw, unfiltered defiance, their eyes scanning the room as though seeking a target for their unspoken challenge. Marjorie, ever the vigilant guardian of her little haven, maintained her composure. She had long learned that Ashbourne was a crucible of unexpected events, where the extraordinary often camouflaged itself as the mundane. Her eyes, however, betrayed a glimmer of concern as she continued to serve steaming cups of coffee to her loyal patrons. In the muted light of the early morning, the scene unfolded like an intricate dance of shadow and light, a narrative of impending conflict that would soon reveal the strength of character hidden beneath the veneer of civility. Ethan, whose presence was as understated as it was resolute, observed the unfolding scene with a measured calm. His mind, ever alert to the signals of danger and the nuances of human behavior, noted the subtle shifts in posture and expression among the newcomers. It was not just the clamor of their engines or the bristling aura of defiance that marked their arrival. It was the calculated confidence, the latent threat that hummed beneath the surface, as if each of them carried an unspoken manifesto of rebellion. Their arrival was not a mere accident of circumstance, but rather the prelude to a confrontation that had been long in the making, a collision of contrasting worlds where old loyalties and hardened identities would soon come into stark relief. In that moment, as the morning light softened into a pale haze over Ashbourne, the quiet pulse of Highland Grove began to accelerate. The threads of the everyday tapestry were about to be rewoven with strands of tension and destiny. Within the gentle murmurs of the cafe, beneath the serene veneer of routine, lay the seeds of transformation. Ethan's gaze, steady and unflinching, bore witness to this brewing storm. Though his body rested comfortably in the familiar confines of his chosen refuge, his spirit was attuned to the undercurrents of conflict, a reminder that even in the most peaceful of havens, echoes of a tumultuous past can resurface to challenge the present. As the steel raptors took tentative steps further into the room, the subtle interplay of light and shadow within Highland Grove deepened, creating an almost cinematic tableau of impending change. Each detail, the glint of metal on leather, the measured cadence of footsteps, the soft murmur of anxious voices, wove together a narrative that promised not only confrontation, but also the potential for profound transformation. In this delicate balance between calm and chaos, the story of Ashbourne was poised on the edge of a turning point, with Ethan Cole standing as its reluctant yet steadfast sentinel. The morning, which had begun with the promise of quiet routine, now carried the weight of choices yet to be made and destinies waiting to be redefined. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if the universe itself had paused to observe the unfolding drama, a drama that would test the limits of courage, challenge the established order, and ultimately reveal the enduring truth that true strength is forged not in the absence of fear, but in the quiet mastery over it. As the murmur of cautious conversation began to ebb and swell within Highland Grove, a palpable tension seeped into every corner of the establishment. The arrival of the steel raptors had set in motion a series of events that would transform the sleepy town of Ashbourne into a stage for conflicts both personal and profound. In the wake of their intrusion, the cafe's atmosphere became charged with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing like a drum roll in the silence that followed. The figures of the steel raptors moved with deliberate precision, their leather-clad forms and glistening helmets marking them as emissaries of a power long feared and often misunderstood. Their silent entrance was a disruption to the gentle cadence of the morning, an unforeseen ripple in the otherwise placid flow of everyday life. While some of the regulars exchanged furtive glances and whispered conjectures about the group's purpose, others seemed almost transfixed by the stark contrast between the vibrancy of their youthful defiance and the weight of unspoken histories that clung to each of them. Within the cafe, the contrast between the gentle solace offered by Highland Grove and the harsh defiance embodied by the newcomers grew ever more pronounced. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans, mingling with the faint aroma of sweet pastries, now bore a hint of something more foreboding, a subtle reminder that beneath the veneer of routine, destiny was gathering its strength. Ethan Cole, still seated in his favored corner, maintained his quiet vigil, his eyes absorbing every detail of the unfolding tableau with a measured calm that belied the storm raging within his memories. Ethan's mind was not solely focused on the intruders, however. He found his thoughts drifting back to the rugged terrains and fierce battles of his past, to days when the razor edge between survival and surrender was drawn in blood and resolve. In those distant, tumultuous moments, every second was a test of will and endurance, a relentless challenge that demanded both physical grit and the fortitude of spirit. Now, as he observed the newcomers with a practiced eye, he could discern in their demeanor a glimmer of rebellion, a silent challenge to the established order of Ashbourne. Their eyes, dark and defiant, revealed fragments of stories untold, and in those fleeting moments, Ethan recognized a common thread between his own history and the fiery ambitions of these riders. Elsewhere in the cafe, the patrons found themselves caught in a collective pause, a breath held in unison as the undercurrents of destiny began to ripple outward. Marjorie, whose years of overseeing the delicate balance of Highland Grove had rendered her both wise and perceptive, moved gracefully among the tables. Her every gesture, though measured and serene, belied the inner turmoil of a caretaker who understood that moments such as these were pivotal. As she passed silently by, her eyes meeting those of an anxious young woman seated by the window, the shared look was laden with an unspoken acknowledgement that the ordinary would soon yield to the extraordinary. The quiet intensity of the moment was interrupted only by the slow, deliberate steps of one of the raptors, a figure whose presence commanded attention not through bluster, but through an aura of inexorable purpose. The man's gait was steady, his eyes scanning the room with an almost analytical detachment, as if he sought to map the vulnerabilities hidden within the crowd. His movements, fluid yet charged with a latent threat, lent a rhythm to the mounting suspense that no one in the cafe could ignore. As he advanced past the counter, where Marjorie continued to serve with stoic grace, the subtle interplay of shadows and light on his face revealed hints of conflict and scars born of battles fought in worlds far removed from the quiet life of Ashbourne. Outside the stained glass windows, the awakening town bore witness to a slow transformation. The gentle hum of early morning activity was punctuated by the distant murmur of traffic and the soft clatter of footsteps on cobblestones, each sound intermingling with the intense silence that enveloped Highland Grove. The steel and leather emissaries had not come solely to disrupt. They carried with them the weight of choices made in far-off lands and the silent echoes of forgotten oaths. Their presence was a reminder that the peace of small-town life was a delicate construct, one that could shatter with a single miscalculated moment. Within the confines of the cafe, the interplay of light and shadow seemed to foreshadow the coming conflict. Every ray of sunlight that pierced through the dusty windows, every flicker of movement in the peripheral vision of the patrons, added to the tapestry of tension that now defined Highland Grove. The once comforting aroma of coffee and baked goods now mingled with an indefinable sense of foreboding, as if the very air had grown heavy with the promise of upheaval. Ethan's steady gaze, unwavering in its focus, was a silent testament to a resolve honed by years of adversity. He had learned that the strength of a man lay not in the absence of fear, but in the quiet mastery of it, a lesson that echoed powerfully in the midst of the brewing storm. As the moments stretched, time itself appeared to slow within the walls of the cafe. Each individual seemed suspended in a delicate balance between routine and revolution, caught in the orbit of a moment that could irrevocably alter the fabric of their lives. The subtle nuances of body language, the unspoken communication of glances and measured breaths, served as the prelude to a confrontation that was as inevitable as it was transformative. The steel raptors, with their eyes fixed on an unseen horizon, carried within them the restless energy of youth and the hardened resolve of those who had long been cast adrift by the winds of fate. The catalyst for the impending clash, however, was not solely found in the physical presence of these outsiders. It resided equally in the silent yet potent exchange of memories and experiences that had, over time, woven the destinies of the townspeople into a complex mosaic of shared history. Ethan, though outwardly composed, was the living embodiment of that history, a bridge between the turbulence of past conflicts and the fragile hope of reconciliation in the present. His eyes, darkened by the weight of unspoken truths, bore witness to the gradual dissolution of the old order, as the relentless march of time challenged the very foundations of Ashbourne's identity. In the hours that followed, as the sun ascended higher in the sky and the gentle caress of morning light began to imbue the cafe with a sense of renewed possibility, the atmosphere within Highland Grove underwent a subtle yet unmistakable metamorphosis. The initial shock of the intruder's arrival gave way to a complex interplay of defiance and introspection. Some patrons, emboldened by the apparent audacity of the Steel Raptors, found in their presence an unexpected call to reclaim a part of themselves long suppressed by routine and resignation. Others, steeped in memories of hardship and the quiet dignity of a bygone era, watched with a mixture of apprehension and wistfulness, as if they perceived in the unfolding drama the distant echoes of battles fought for ideals that had once defined their community. The relentless passage of time in that moment seemed to suspend the ordinary and elevate the extraordinary. Every detail, from the way light danced across the weathered wooden surfaces of the cafe to the silent determination etched upon the faces of both patrons and intruders, contributed to a narrative that was both immediate and timeless. The air vibrated with an energy that defied easy categorization, a potent mixture of anticipation, regret, and the unyielding desire for redemption. It was as though the very walls of Highland Grove, steeped in decades of whispered confidences and shared sorrows, were preparing to bear witness to a pivotal chapter in the town's unfolding saga. In this delicate balance between serenity and disruption, the lives of those within Ashbourne were poised on the threshold of irrevocable change. Ethan's measured presence, the unwavering resolve of Marjorie as she navigated the unfolding chaos, and the silent yet profound challenge posed by the Steel Raptors all converged to form a tableau of human experience at its most elemental. The cafe, with its humble origins and storied past, now stood as a microcosm of a broader struggle, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of encroaching darkness. As the day advanced and the tension within Highland Grove deepened, the subtle indicators of a brewing confrontation became increasingly apparent. The careful choreography of glances, the deliberate pacing of footsteps, and the silent, almost imperceptible shifts in posture all testified to an unspoken agreement among those present that the forces of history, identity, and pride were about to collide in a manner that could no longer be postponed. The stage was set for a contest of wills, a quiet yet inexorable clash between the familiar comforts of the past and the disruptive energies of a future yet to be defined. In the midst of this evolving drama, Ethan remained a steadfast observer, his inner resolve as unyielding as the granite foundations upon which Ashbourne had been built. The interplay of memory and anticipation, the delicate dance between hope and despair, all coalesced within him into a singular clarity of purpose. It was a purpose that transcended the immediate circumstances of the cafe, reaching deep into the core of what it meant to be a guardian of not just one's own soul, but of an entire community on the cusp of transformation. Every passing minute imbued the space with an intensified sense of inevitability, a slow-burning fuse that promised both conflict and, perhaps, the opportunity for rebirth. As the subtle dynamics of power shifted and realigned within Highland Grove, the town of Ashbourne braced itself for the unfolding of events that would redefine its identity. The echoes of the past and the uncertainties of the future converged in that singular moment, and the once quiet sanctuary of the cafe became the crucible in which the next chapter of the town's story would be forged. In the waning light of a brisk mid-morning, the once calm ambience of Highland Grove underwent a subtle metamorphosis. The earlier ripple of unease had evolved into a discernible current of expectation, a tension that seemed to electrify every worn table, every creaking floorboard of the storied establishment. The arrival of the Steel Raptors had not only unsettled the ordinary flow of daily life, but also stirred memories and hidden conflicts deep within the heart of Ashbourne. As sunlight grew bolder against the aged walls, a quiet determination began to manifest among the patrons, each silently bracing for an eventual collision of forces that, though unseen, loomed imminently on the horizon. Ethan Cole, whose presence had remained a beacon of understated resilience, now appeared as a solitary guardian amid a brewing maelstrom. His eyes, dark and contemplative, roved over the room, taking in every nuance of shifting expressions and subtle gestures. The memories of his past, the searing intensity of combat, the relentless pursuit of an elusive enemy in shadowed alleyways, converged with the present moment, reminding him that tranquility was but a transient state in a world forever poised on the brink of upheaval. His mind recalled not only the rigors of his former life as a Navy SEAL, but also the moments of hard-won humanity that had followed, when he had sought solace in community and quiet reflection after a lifetime of conflict. The atmosphere within Highland Grove, already laden with anticipation, deepened as the hours advanced. Marjorie, the steadfast proprietor whose calm had become synonymous with the cafe's identity, continued her measured movements behind the counter. With each graceful step, she balanced the dual responsibilities of tending to her loyal customers and monitoring the evolving situation. Her subtle glances toward the door and the entrance of the cafe betrayed an unspoken vigilance, a determination to safeguard the fragile harmony of her sanctuary from forces that threatened to rend it asunder. The delicate interplay between service and protection was not lost on her. She understood that in moments of uncertainty, the seemingly trivial act of preparing a cup of coffee could serve as a powerful emblem of normalcy and resistance. Meanwhile, the steel raptors themselves exuded a calculated defiance that was both mesmerizing and foreboding. Their presence, marked by the low growl of motorcycle engines and the rhythmic clatter of metallic gear, infused the space with a sense of deliberate purpose. Each rider, clad in dark leathers and adorned with insignias that spoke of secretive allegiances and shadowy pasts, moved as though choreographed by an unspoken code of conduct, a code that was as much about honor as it was about intimidation. Their leader, a figure known only by the appellation Donovan Black, radiated an air of authority tempered by the weight of decisions made in the crucible of conflict. His measured stride and the deliberate tilt of his head hinted at a mind steeped in both tactical acumen and personal vendetta, qualities that had undoubtedly carved his path through the turbulent annals of outlaw lore. Outside the cafe, the town of Ashbourne seemed to hold its breath. The narrow lanes and cobblestone alleys, typically bathed in the soft hum of daily routines, now resonated with an undercurrent of silent discourse. Neighbors exchanged wary looks as they passed by the large arched windows of Highland Grove, their eyes filled with questions about what destiny might soon unveil. The interplay of light and shadow, the interplay of memory and the present, had woven a tapestry that transcended mere everyday happenings. It was as if the very spirit of Ashbourne was awakening to the promise of transformation. Within the intimate confines of the cafe, an intricate ballet of observation and introspection unfolded. Every gesture carried meaning, every silent pause was laden with unspoken challenges. Among those gathered was a young woman whose eyes shone with a blend of defiance and hope, a spark of rebellion that defied the quiet resignation often borne by those who had known only the measured rhythms of routine. She had arrived with a sense of purpose that belied her tender years, her presence an embodiment of the town's latent yearning for change. As she sat at a corner table, her gaze drifting occasionally toward Ethan, it was evident that she saw in him a kindred spirit, a reminder that even in the face of looming adversity, one could still dare to dream of renewal. The tension inside the cafe was punctuated by the occasional murmur of whispered conversations, each one a fragment of speculation about what the arrival of the steel raptors might portend. These fragments, though seemingly insignificant, coalesced into an audible cadence, a heartbeat that resonated with the pulse of a town on the verge of redefining itself. The interplay of dialogue and silence, of unspoken promises and wary anticipations, created an atmosphere where every second felt stretched, weighted with the gravity of impending destiny. In this charged milieu, the quiet observance of Ethan Cole became a fulcrum upon which the balance of the unfolding drama hinged, a silent yet potent declaration that he would not yield to the tides of chaos. As the morning matured into a period of heightened expectation, Ethan's internal landscape swirled with recollections of his former missions in hostile territories, landscapes where every decision was a gamble with life and death. His experiences had taught him that beneath the veneer of calm often lay a turbulent sea of conflict, where the line between friend and foe blurred into shades of gray. In his contemplative solitude, he began to trace the parallels between those distant battlegrounds and the present scenario unfolding before him. The echoes of gunfire, the acrid scent of burning fuel, the desperate urgency of escaping imminent danger, all of these recollections coexisted with the gentle clinks of coffee cups and the rustle of newspaper pages within Highland Grove. In this duality, Ethan found a stark reminder that the boundaries of peace were always temporary, and that true strength lay in the capacity to adapt, to remain vigilant even when circumstances appeared deceptively serene. Beyond the walls of the cafe, the world outside continued its daily march, oblivious to the brewing storm within. The town's clock tower, an ancient sentinel that had observed generations pass by, tolled softly as if marking the rhythm of an inexorable fate. In the shadow of its chime, the citizens of Ashbourne went about their business with a mixture of quiet routine and subconscious anticipation, as if an unspoken understanding connected them to the unfolding events within Highland Grove. The promise of confrontation, of an inevitable clash between old loyalties and new aspirations, hovered like a spectral presence, a reminder that every epoch of history was defined by moments when the delicate balance between order and chaos was tested. Within this intricate web of destiny, the character of Donovan Black emerged not merely as a harbinger of disruption, but as a symbol of the complex interplay between power and honor. His deliberate movements and the silent aura that enveloped him were a testament to the battles he had fought, not only on the unforgiving streets of outlaws, but also within the corridors of his own conscience. The decisions he had made, the alliances he had forged and severed, all contributed to the enigmatic figure he had become. In his steady, unwavering gait, one could discern the burdens of regret and resolve, a duality that hinted at a past rich with both valor and sorrow. As the sun climbed higher, its rays piercing through the stained glass windows of Highland Grove and casting kaleidoscopic patterns upon the time-worn floor, the subtle dynamics of confrontation began to crystallize. The once quiet murmurs of curiosity had given way to an almost tangible expectancy, a silent prelude to the collision of ideals that would soon reshape the fabric of the community. It was as if the very air had been charged with an energy that defied explanation, a convergence of past grievances, present defiance, and future hope. In that moment, every element within Highland Grove, from the polished brass of the counter to the worn leather of the chairs, seemed to participate in a grand, unfolding narrative. The cafe, long a repository of shared histories and whispered confidences, now served as the stage for a drama that transcended its modest physical confines. The threads of personal struggle, communal resilience, and the timeless quest for justice intertwined to form a tapestry that was as intricate as it was expansive. Ethan Cole, the silent sentinel of this microcosm, appeared as both witness and participant, a man whose inner resolve had been tempered in the crucible of war, and whose presence now lent an unspoken strength to the collective heartbeat of Ashbourne. As the hours passed and the inevitable convergence of fates drew nearer, the atmosphere within Highland Grove shifted imperceptibly from a state of cautious anticipation to one of poised determination. Every soul present, whether bound by a history of hardship or driven by a newfound desire for transformation, seemed to hold its breath in collective solidarity. The promise of change, once a distant murmur, had evolved into a clarion call, a summons for those who had long been mired in the complacency of routine to rise and reclaim the dignity that lay dormant within them. In the interplay of light, shadow, and human resolve, a silent pact was being forged, a pact that transcended the immediate threat posed by the steel raptors. It was a pact born of shared experience, of an understanding that true strength was not measured solely by physical prowess but by the capacity to endure, to forgive, and to forge ahead despite the scars of the past. Within the hallowed walls of Highland Grove, every gesture, every glance, every measured pause carried the weight of a collective promise, that no matter how formidable the challenges that lay ahead, the spirit of Ashbourne would endure, unyielding and ever resolute. In this moment of poised transformation, the stage was set for an encounter that would test the mettle of every individual present. The quiet determination of Ethan Cole, the unwavering vigilance of Marjorie, and the silent, steely resolve of Donovan Black and his crew converged in an intricate dance of fate and circumstance. The cafe had become more than a refuge. It had become the crucible in which the very soul of Ashbourne would be recast, its old boundaries dissolved and its future reimagined. And as the mid-morning light bathed the room in a hopeful glow, the latent promise of renewal stirred in every heart. A promise that the storm, once unleashed, would yield to the enduring power of resilience and the unspoken, unbreakable bonds of community. As the morning progressed into a brisk afternoon, the ambiance of Highland Grove underwent a transformation that carried with it the deep echoes of both bygone conflicts and new, uncertain beginnings. The steady hum of conversation had gradually given way to a quiet, intense focus. Every gesture, every fleeting glance, became a silent thread woven into the broader tapestry of destiny that now encircled the cafe. The subtle interplay between the ordinary and the extraordinary was palpable, a living, breathing reminder that even in the most unassuming settings, the forces of change were ceaselessly at work. In the wake of the Steel Raptor's arrival, the energy within the room grew charged with the promise of imminent upheaval. The riders, now dispersed into various corners of the cafe, continued to exude a calculated defiance, their presence like shadows cast long by the light of an approaching storm. Donovan Black, their leader, remained an enigmatic figure, an embodiment of hardened resolve and lingering regret. His every measured step and every deliberate pause resonated with the unspoken history of countless battles fought both on chaotic streets and within the inner sanctum of a conflicted soul. Ethan Cole sat as ever in his favored corner, his eyes, those dark, steady windows into a past riddled with scars and valor, observing the unfolding scene with a quiet intensity that belied the undercurrents of his own inner turmoil. The memories of distant conflicts and the relentless march of duty mingled in his thoughts with the immediate reality before him. He recalled the heat of desert battles, the relentless pressure of hostile encounters, and the stark choices that had once determined life from death. Now, far removed from that brutal theater of war, the soft murmur of voices and the gentle clink of porcelain served as a counterpoint to the deep, unyielding cadence of survival ingrained within him. Outside, the town of Ashbourne continued its daily pulse, seemingly unaware of the monumental drama unfolding behind the cafe's time-worn walls. Yet within every narrow street and beneath every archway, the whispers of change grew louder, a subtle revolution of hearts and minds stirring in anticipation of what was to come. The community, long accustomed to the quiet routines of small-town life, now found itself drawn into a moment of reckoning, a point at which the old order would inevitably confront the rising tide of transformation. Inside Highland Grove, Marjorie moved with quiet determination, her eyes constantly surveying her domain as if every detail could signal the turning point of the day. The steady rhythm of her movements, honed by years of balancing care with caution, lent an almost ritualistic cadence to the proceedings. She knew that the cafe was more than just a refuge for weary souls. It had become a stage upon which the drama of human resilience and defiance was being played out in real time. With every cup she served and every softly spoken word, she strove to anchor the fragile sense of normalcy against the unpredictable currents that now threatened to sweep through the lives of her patrons. The dynamic between Ethan and the intruders deepened with the inexorable passage of time. The tension in the room was not solely a matter of physical proximity or the stark contrast between the inhabitants of Highland Grove and the Steel Raptors. It was a manifestation of deeper, more ancient forces. It was the collision of past and present, a contest of wills that pitted hardened experience against youthful rebellion, quiet determination against overt defiance. As the rays of the afternoon sun slanted through the stained glass windows, casting fractured patterns upon the worn wooden floor, each beam of light seemed to encapsulate a moment of both beauty and impending discord. In one quiet corner of the cafe, a group of regulars huddled together, their expressions a mix of apprehension and cautious hope. Their eyes frequently darted toward Ethan, whose calm demeanor served as a beacon of steadfast strength in an environment charged with uncertainty. They recalled stories of past turmoil, of a time when the town had itself been challenged by forces both internal and external, when the very fabric of their community had been tested. Now, as the presence of the Steel Raptors loomed large, those recollections mingled with a desperate desire to reclaim a sense of order and dignity. Each person in the room, whether overtly vocal or silently observant, was caught in the magnetic pull of a destiny that promised either ruin or redemption. The narrative of the day took an unexpected turn as a quiet figure emerged from the back of the cafe. A man whose presence had until now been largely unnoticed, he moved with a deliberate grace that suggested an intimate familiarity with both the rhythms of Highland Grove and the undercurrents of conflict that threaded through its very soul. His features were unremarkable at first glance, yet there was an air of quiet intensity about him, a latent power waiting to be unleashed. This man, known to a few as Jonas Reed, was a veteran of struggles that had long faded into the recesses of personal memory, yet his eyes shone with the clarity of one who had seen the cost of both surrender and resistance. Jonas's arrival was subtle, a mere shift in the spatial dynamics of the room, yet his presence sent a ripple of recognition through the assembly of patrons. Those who had known him from earlier days, when the town had been less burdened by the weight of recent events, now regarded him with a mixture of surprise and relief. In his measured pace and unhurried gaze, they sensed a promise of solidarity, a man who, like Ethan, had borne the scars of conflict and emerged tempered by the crucible of experience. Jonas did not need to utter a single word. His very presence was a silent testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the afternoon wore on, the interplay of light and shadow deepened into a more complex dance. Every detail within Highland Grove, the soft rustle of newspapers being read, the gentle clink of utensils against ceramic, the distant murmur of conversations interspersed with thoughtful silences, wove together a narrative that transcended the immediate crisis. The cafe had become a living chronicle of the town's collective hopes and fears, a microcosm where the battle between preservation and progress played out in every exchanged look and every hesitant step. In the midst of this unfolding drama, Ethan's inner resolve began to crystallize into a silent but formidable plan. The weight of his past experiences had instilled in him a profound understanding of the delicate balance between confrontation and compromise. He knew that the Steel Raptors, with all their bravado and defiance, were not mere agents of chaos, but were driven by forces that had, at their core, sought recognition and respect, even if through the language of intimidation. His gaze shifted slowly from the imposing figures in leather to the quiet faces of the townspeople, absorbing their silent yearning for change. In that moment, Ethan recognized that the battle to come was not solely about personal redemption or retribution, but about the fundamental reawakening of a community long subdued by the unyielding grip of fear. As the low hum of conversations mingled with the ambient sounds of the cafe, a subtle shift began to occur among the Steel Raptors as well. Their initial posture of overt defiance gave way, ever so slightly, to an acknowledgement of the weight of the moment. Donovan Black's eyes, dark and reflective, flickered with a hint of introspection as he observed the determined faces of those gathered. It was as if, in the shared silence of Highland Grove, the external markers of rebellion, leather, chrome, and raw bravado, began to dissolve in the face of a more profound, unspoken truth. The realization that every individual, regardless of past allegiances or outward appearances, was bound by the same inescapable threads of destiny became a silent, unifying force that transcended the immediate conflict. Within this charged atmosphere, the cafe itself seemed to take on a life of its own, a living entity that had witnessed the ebb and flow of countless lives and the rise and fall of many a dream. The walls, adorned with faded photographs and mementos of long-forgotten times, now bore witness to the unfolding drama with a stoic permanence. Every crack in the plaster, every worn-out chair, became a silent chronicler of the day's events, a repository for the hopes and fears that had surged like a tide within these hallowed confines. In the ensuing moments, the tension that had gripped Highland Grove reached a crescendo that promised both chaos and catharsis. The quiet determination of the townspeople, the measured vigilance of Ethan and Jonas, and the latent introspection of the Steel Raptors converged in a maelstrom of unspoken challenges and possibilities. The boundaries between adversary and ally, between past and present, began to blur as each individual found themselves drawn inexorably into a collective narrative. A story that was larger than any single person, a saga in which every heartbeat contributed to the unfolding epic. As the afternoon deepened and shadows lengthened across the cafe floor, the transformative energy of the moment became undeniable. The stage was set not merely for a confrontation, but for a profound redefinition of what it meant to belong, to resist, and to hope. The day had evolved into a tapestry of intertwined destinies, a narrative where every soul present, from the quiet guardian in the corner to the defiant riders at the periphery, played a role in the relentless march toward a future that promised renewal even as it bore the scars of its tumultuous past. In this crucible of change, Highland Grove stood as both sanctuary and battleground, a place where the quiet courage of one man, the steadfast care of a community custodian, and the hidden depths of a renegade soul would collide in a symphony of resilience. The palpable energy in the room, born from years of suppressed fears and unspoken aspirations, was a testament to the enduring power of transformation. In that silent, potent moment, the town of Ashbourne and its denizens found themselves poised on the threshold of a new era where the echoes of old wounds might finally give way to the promise of redemption and rebirth. As the late afternoon gradually yielded to the approaching hues of twilight, the atmosphere in Highland Grove deepened into an almost palpable aura of impending reckoning. The cafe, a steadfast refuge amid the trials of a restless town, had already borne witness to the subtle shifts of power and the quiet defiance of those who had long been weighed down by a history of suppressed voices. Now, in the dwindling light, every detail, the muted chatter of the patrons, the slow, deliberate movements of those seeking solace, and the furtive glances exchanged between allies and adversaries alike, seemed imbued with an intensified significance, as if the very air had grown heavy with the secrets of yesterday and the promise of tomorrow. Ethan Cole, whose quiet vigilance had anchored the unfolding saga from the moment the intruders had arrived, now appeared as an unwavering sentinel amid a storm of converging destinies. The steady cadence of his breathing, the deliberate stillness of his gaze, and the subtle, almost imperceptible furrowing of his brow spoke volumes of the internal calculus he was undertaking. Every memory from distant battlefields and every scar born from a lifetime of service reverberated in his mind as he assessed the layers of tension building around him. His thoughts, intricate and burdened with the weight of experiences that transcended the immediate crisis, wandered through the corridors of time, evoking the silent resolve of long-forgotten comrades, the bitter taste of past betrayals, and the quiet satisfaction of battles won not by brute force, but by the subtle mastery of inner strength. Outside, the fading light painted the town of Ashbourne with gentle strokes of gold and crimson, transforming familiar streets into a canvas of shifting shadows and delicate silhouettes. The cobblestones, worn smooth by countless footsteps over the years, now bore an almost spectral luminescence under the glow of the setting sun. The town itself, a repository of cherished traditions and enduring legacies, seemed to brace itself for an upheaval that was both inevitable and transformative. Every building, every alleyway, whispered of stories untold, as though the very soul of Ashbourne had been roused from a deep slumber by the call of destiny. Within Highland Grove, Marjorie moved with an elegance that belied the gravity of the situation. Her every action, from the careful arrangement of fresh pastries to the measured pace of refilling coffee cups, was executed with an almost ritualistic precision. In the spaces between these small acts of care, her observant eyes scanned the room with a heightened awareness, cataloging the subtle shifts in mood and posture that signified the evolving balance between order and chaos. She knew that every moment in this fragile interlude was fraught with potential, a moment when the fragile veneer of civility could give way to the raw surge of passion and defiance. And yet, through it all, she remained a beacon of steady resilience, a living reminder that even amid turmoil, the essence of community lay in the simple, steadfast acts of nurturing and care. Jonas Reed, the quiet newcomer whose presence had resonated with a deep familiarity among the long-time denizens of Ashbourne, continued his silent vigil. Seated at a table tucked away near a large window that framed the dying light, he absorbed the unfolding scene with the intensity of one who had witnessed the oscillation between hope and despair countless times before. His thoughts, layered with the quiet wisdom of lived experience, coalesced around the unspoken recognition that true change was not wrought by the clash of arms or the roar of engines, but by the subtle interplay of conviction and compassion. In the reflective surface of the window, he saw not just his own silhouette, but the spectral outline of a future that might yet be redeemed from the precipice of disillusionment. The steel raptors, though still marked by an exterior of raw defiance and uncompromising intent, began to reveal the fissures in their formidable facade. Donovan Black, whose presence had dominated the room with an aura of implacable authority, now appeared contemplative, a man wrestling with the dual imperatives of loyalty to his own code and the realization that the lines between ally and adversary were far more blurred than he had ever imagined. His eyes, once steely with the resolve of a hardened outlaw, now shimmered with the soft glimmer of introspection, as though the twilight had unlocked a vulnerability long buried beneath layers of leather and hardened resolve. The subtle exchange of glances between him and Ethan Cole, two figures united by the burdens of their pasts yet divided by the paths they had chosen, spoke to a complex dialogue of unspoken understanding and the painful acknowledgement of inevitable change. In the hushed murmurs that drifted across Highland Grove, an almost imperceptible cadence emerged, a heartbeat that synchronized with the rhythm of a town on the cusp of transformation. The collective consciousness of the patrons, each bearing their own quiet stories of loss, resilience, and longing, seemed to coalesce into a single resonant chord. It was a chord that vibrated with the promise of new beginnings, even as it carried the faint echo of bygone struggles. Every gesture, a slow nod, a fleeting smile, a shared look of determination, became a testament to the unyielding spirit of Ashbourne, a spirit that refused to be extinguished by the transient flames of discord. As the day wore on and shadows deepened into the somber blue of approaching night, the narrative within the cafe began to pivot. What had begun as a subtle interplay of silent defiance and quiet observance now swelled into a dynamic tableau of impending reckoning. Ethan Cole's gaze, unwavering and penetrating, shifted from the worn surfaces of Highland Grove to the broader tapestry of lives intersecting within its walls. His inner resolve crystallized into a profound clarity, a realization that the course of the coming events would not be determined solely by the bravado of a few, but by the cumulative strength of a community united in its desire for dignity and renewal. In this pivotal moment, the boundaries that had long separated the disparate elements of the cafe's occupants began to dissolve. The once stark divisions between the quiet guardians of the past and the audacious heralds of the future softened into a shared recognition of mutual vulnerability and collective hope. The very air in the room seemed to pulse with the energy of transformation, a silent promise that every soul present, regardless of their origin or the scars they bore, was an essential thread in the intricate tapestry of the town's future. The echoes of old wounds, the burden of past transgressions, and the promise of redemption all converged in a delicate balance that defied simple explanation. It was within this profound crucible of emotion and resolve that the next phase of the day began to unfold. The rhythmic murmur of the cafe, punctuated by the occasional clink of a porcelain cup or the soft rustle of a newspaper page, lent the scene an air of measured calm that belied the brewing storm. In that measured calm, each individual presence, be it the steadfast assurance of Ethan, the nurturing vigilance of Marjorie, the reflective calm of Jonas, or even the evolving expressions of the steel raptors, served as a silent herald of the transformative events that were about to reshape their shared destiny. As the light outside gradually surrendered to the encroaching dusk, a sense of solemn expectation filled the space. The day's events, now reaching a crescendo of quiet intensity, carried within them the seeds of both confrontation and reconciliation. The unyielding tension that had woven its way through every conversation and every unspoken glance was tempered by the realization that true strength was found not in the isolation of individual struggle, but in the collective embrace of a community determined to rise above the challenges of its past. In that intricate interplay of memory and aspiration, the people of Ashbourne discovered a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet, defiant determination to reclaim the dignity that had long been overshadowed by fear. Highland Grove, with its time-worn walls and enduring spirit, stood as a silent witness to this unfolding drama, a living repository of countless histories and quiet triumphs. As the last vestiges of daylight faded and the first stars of the evening began to emerge, the cafe seemed to glow with an inner light, as though it held within its very essence the promise of a new dawn. In that fleeting, liminal space between day and night, every heartbeat, every whispered hope, and every silent vow became part of a grand narrative, a narrative that promised not only the resolution of the present conflict, but the rebirth of a community long subdued by the forces of fear and division. Thus, in the quiet majesty of the fading afternoon, the stage was irrevocably set for the events that would soon redefine the very soul of Ashbourne. The convergence of past and present, the melding of defiant resolve with tender hope, and the unspoken commitment of every individual present in Highland Grove formed the bedrock upon which the future would be built. And as the twilight deepened into the soft embrace of night, the indomitable spirit of the town shone through, a beacon of quiet resistance and a solemn promise that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human heart would continue to beat with a strength that transcended time, conflict, and the inexorable march of fate. As night fully claimed the skies over Ashbourne, the once familiar contours of Highland Grove were transformed by the interplay of deep shadows and the sporadic glint of street lamps. The cafe, now a crucible of converging fates, stood quietly defiant against the encroaching darkness. Within its time-worn walls, every whisper, every measured breath, and every flicker of candlelight bore testimony to the tumult of emotions that had been steadily building throughout the day. Now, as the twilight gave way to the enigmatic pulse of night, the residents of Ashbourne found themselves gathered at a crossroads between the haunting legacies of their past and the promise of a transformed future. Ethan Cole remained in his corner, his eyes reflecting both the resolute spark of unwavering determination and the soft sheen of memories that time could never fully erase. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat, in tune with the silent murmurs of Highland Grove, provided a counterpoint to the storm of thoughts that cascaded behind his calm exterior. In his mind, images of long-forgotten battlefields and the stark realities of conflict intermingled with visions of a community striving for rebirth. Each memory was a silent reminder of the sacrifices borne by those who dared to challenge the tides of fate, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit when it chose to stand firm in the face of adversity. Outside, the streets of Ashbourne had quieted, yet the undercurrent of anticipation remained palpable. The once boisterous engines of the steel raptors now lay dormant in the nearby alley, their presence a lingering echo of defiance. Donovan Black and his cohorts, having weathered the day's escalating tensions, retreated into the veil of darkness, leaving behind a residue of conflicted purpose that clung to the cool night air. Their departure was not a retreat, but a recalibration of strategy, a silent acknowledgement that the battle for Ashbourne was far from over. The enigma of their intentions, mingled with the community's burgeoning hope, set the stage for the next act in this unfolding drama. Within the cafe, the transformation was subtle yet profound. Marjorie moved about with a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet resolve born of years spent nurturing the fragile fabric of community life. Every gesture she made, from the graceful placement of a saucer to the soft, deliberate polishing of a counter edge, was imbued with an unspoken promise that no matter the external threats or the specters of a turbulent past, the heart of Ashbourne would continue to beat with an unyielding rhythm of resilience. In her eyes, the challenges of the day were not isolated incidents of chaos, but rather catalysts for a deeper, more enduring change that could only come from within. Jonas Reed, seated at the window that framed the nocturnal tableau, continued to watch with a reflective stillness. The quiet man, whose very presence had always hinted at stories of personal battles and hard-won lessons, now appeared as both a witness and a participant in the community's transformation. His gaze swept over the subdued figures gathered in the cafe, a mosaic of old souls and young hearts united by their shared desire for renewal. In that silent communion, Jonas perceived the invisible threads that bound each individual to the larger narrative of Ashbourne, a tapestry woven from the resilient fibers of hope, loss, and the unspoken yearning for redemption. Amid these shifting dynamics, the essence of the day's struggles began to coalesce into an unspoken vow among the patrons. The lingering tension that had defined the hours before was now tempered by a cautious optimism, a belief that the scars of past conflicts could serve as both a reminder of hard-fought victories and as a foundation for a more compassionate future. It was a moment of introspection, where the community, gathered in the quiet sanctuary of Highland Grove, allowed themselves a fleeting glimpse of what might be achieved when fear was replaced by understanding and defiance by dialogue. In the deep stillness of the night, the interplay of light and shadow within the cafe took on a near mythical quality. The sporadic flicker of candle flames danced across the faces of those present, each reflection a silent testament to the inner strength of a people on the verge of reawakening. The very walls of Highland Grove, etched with memories of laughter, sorrow, and whispered confidences, seemed to breathe with a newfound vitality, absorbing the emotions of the hour and transmuting them into a promise of renewal. Every crack, every faded mural resonated with the stories of generations that had come before, offering a quiet reassurance that the legacy of Ashbourne was not defined by its past tribulations, but by the enduring spirit of its inhabitants. Ethan's gaze, now shifting slowly to include not only the hardened faces of his fellow townspeople, but also the softer, more hopeful expressions of younger souls, bore the unmistakable mark of a man who had come to understand that true power lay in the ability to transform pain into purpose. The burdens of his previous life, the sacrifices, the silent battles fought in the shadows of conflict, had prepared him for this very moment. In the convergence of the old guard and the emerging new voices of Ashbourne, he saw a reflection of his own journey, a passage from solitude and strife to a communal embrace of healing and progress. As the night deepened, the subtle cadence of conversation resumed, delicate and deliberate, like the measured steps of a dance choreographed by fate itself. The patrons of Highland Grove began to share glances filled with empathy and determination, a silent acknowledgement that the struggles of the day were but the prelude to a greater transformation yet to come. In those shared moments of connection, the barriers that once separated individuals began to dissolve, replaced by an invisible bond forged in the fires of shared adversity and tempered by the gentle promise of a brighter tomorrow. The lingering remnants of the day's turmoil, once embodied in the presence of the steel raptors and the charged atmosphere of impending conflict, were now receding into the background, yielding to a collective resolve to rebuild. The memory of defiant challenges and harsh words softened in the face of the community's unwavering desire to reclaim its identity. The quiet rebellion that had sparked earlier in the day was evolving into something richer and more profound, a movement born not of confrontation alone, but of the power of unity, reflection, and an unspoken promise to forge a future free of the shackles of fear. In that transformative hour, as the night wrapped Ashbourne in its gentle embrace, the future of the town lay open, a horizon not defined by the scars of previous battles, but by the luminous possibility of a shared destiny. The narrative of Highland Grove, etched into every crevice of its venerable structure, was poised to become the cornerstone of a new era, one in which the indomitable spirit of its people would shine brighter than any shadow cast by the past. And as the first hints of a new day began to stir in the far reaches of the horizon, the silent promise of redemption and renewal lingered in the cool, hushed air, a promise that the journey of transformation had only just begun. As the inky veil of night deepened further over Ashbourne, Highland Grove transformed into an almost sacred arena where the past and future converged in a silent dialogue. The lingering embers of earlier tensions now burned with a quiet intensity that resonated through every crevice of the aged establishment. In this hallowed space, the interplay of dim light and lingering shadows wove a narrative of both melancholic remembrance and the burgeoning promise of renewal. The café, long a silent witness to the myriad chapters of the town's history, now held the collective breath of its denizens as they stood on the threshold of profound transformation. Ethan Cole, whose unwavering gaze had borne the weight of countless untold stories, remained seated at his customary corner table. His eyes, dark and reflective as the midnight sky outside, traced the subtle movements of those gathered within. In the gentle flicker of candlelight, his features bore the stoic imprint of a man who had faced the harshest trials of life and emerged tempered by the crucible of conflict. His inner world, a repository of both scars and hard-won wisdom, pulsed quietly in tandem with the rhythms of Highland Grove. It was here that memories of distant battlefields and the bittersweet taste of sacrifices made coexisted with a delicate hope, a hope that was now crystallizing into an unspoken pact among the townsfolk. Throughout the café, each figure seemed to inhabit a dual existence, caught between the echo of former lives and the dawning of a new era. Marjorie, ever the vigilant guardian of this cherished haven, moved with measured grace along the narrow corridors between tables. Her eyes, warm yet perceptive, scanned the room as though reading an ancient text written in the silent gestures of her patrons. In her steady presence lay the assurance of continuity, a reminder that even as external forces sought to disrupt the delicate equilibrium of the town, the heart of Ashbourne remained resilient. Every careful movement of hers, every deliberate placement of a cup or the gentle smoothing of a weathered tablecloth, was a quiet act of defiance against the chaos that had once threatened to unravel their community. In a secluded corner near the fogged window that framed the obsidian night, Jonas Reed sat in reflective solitude. His demeanor, composed and thoughtful, suggested a man who had learned that the art of survival lay not in the overt declaration of power, but in the measured acceptance of vulnerability. He watched the interplay of light and shadow across the room, noting how the subtle shifts in expression on the faces of those present told a story far deeper than words ever could. In the silent communion shared between him and his fellow patrons, there arose an implicit understanding that the struggles of the past were not to be erased, but transformed into the foundation of a brighter future. The atmosphere within Highland Grove had assumed an almost ritualistic quality. Each individual seemed to partake in an unspoken ceremony of healing and rebirth, a collective meditation on the nature of resilience. The remnants of earlier discord, once embodied in the defiant silhouettes of the steel raptors, had faded into the background, replaced by a burgeoning sense of communal solidarity. Even the memories of Donovan Black's hardened defiance now appeared softened by a dawning introspection, as though the relentless march of time had coaxed forth an innate capacity for change from within even the most obstinate of hearts. As the hours stretched into the early pre-dawn, the town itself seemed to stir in quiet anticipation. Outside, the hushed murmur of wind in the ancient trees and the distant, rhythmic clatter of a lone train on its tracks provided a gentle counterpoint to the silent symphony unfolding inside. The world beyond Highland Grove, though shrouded in the deepest shades of night, pulsed with an energy that hinted at the arrival of a new day, a day that would bear witness to the culmination of tensions and the possibility of profound transformation. In that liminal space between night and morning, every heartbeat, every measured breath, and every subtle glance exchanged within the cafe resonated as part of a grander, timeless narrative. Within the confines of this nocturnal haven, the interplay of internal and external forces reached a crescendo that was as fragile as it was formidable. The legacy of past hardships, etched into every weathered surface of Highland Grove, melded with the hopeful aspirations of those gathered. The silent communion among the patrons spoke of a collective desire not merely to survive, but to redefine what it meant to live in a community that had known both the brutality of discord and the healing power of unity. In that transformative silence, the essence of Ashbourne was being recast, not as a relic of bygone eras, but as a living, breathing testament to the capacity for reinvention. Ethan's contemplative gaze swept over the room, capturing the subtle interplay of sorrow and determination in the eyes of his compatriots. In that quiet moment, it became evident that the true battle was not one of physical confrontation, but a contest of wills, a struggle to reclaim dignity and forge meaning in the aftermath of pain. His presence, marked by a resolute calm, stood as a beacon for those who had long lived in the shadow of fear. The silent strength that emanated from him, born of years spent facing the stark realities of human conflict, now illuminated the path forward for a community on the cusp of rebirth. As the darkness of the pre-dawn hours deepened, an almost imperceptible shift began to take hold within Highland Grove. The charged energy of the evening, once teetering on the edge of tumult, gradually softened into a reflective quietude, a collective pause in which every soul present allowed itself to dream of a future free from the binds of past transgressions. The walls of the cafe, steeped in the echoes of both joy and sorrow, seemed to murmur a timeless promise that no matter how deep the scars of history, the spirit of renewal could always be kindled anew by the unwavering resolve of those who dared to hope. In this profound stillness, where every minute detail, from the faint rustle of a newspaper page to the soft clink of porcelain, contributed to the overall tapestry of transformation, the people of Ashbourne found themselves united by an unspoken conviction. They recognized that the journey ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, that the legacy of their past could not simply be erased by the mere passage of time. Yet, within the gentle interplay of shadow and light, there shone the indomitable flame of a community determined to rise above its pain. Their silent vigil in the heart of Highland Grove was not an act of resignation, but an affirmation that from the crucible of night, a new day would indeed emerge. Thus, in the solemn embrace of pre-dawn darkness, the narrative of Ashbourne and its steadfast inhabitants was poised to take a decisive turn. The silent covenant forged in those hushed moments within Highland Grove carried the weight of all that had come before, while simultaneously opening the door to infinite possibilities. In the quiet majesty of that night, every heart beat with a renewed sense of purpose, every soul pulsed with the promise of redemption, and the legacy of a town scarred by conflict was set on a path toward a luminous, reimagined future. As the first pale blush of dawn began to soften the deep blues of the pre-dawn sky, the ambience within Highland Grove slowly transformed from a state of reflective stillness to one of burgeoning, tentative hope. The long night, with all its silent revelations and hidden emotions, had passed, leaving behind a residue of introspection that now shimmered like dew on the worn wooden surfaces of the beloved cafe. In the fragile light of early morning, every detail within the establishment, each creaking floorboard, every crack in the plaster, even the delicate patterns of light and shadow, seemed to echo the promise of renewal and rebirth that had been so long awaited by the denizens of Ashbourne. Ethan Cole, still seated in his habitual corner, now appeared to be emerging from the depths of his reflective vigil. His eyes, which had borne witness to both the relentless toll of past conflicts and the steady flame of inner resilience, now reflected a subtle glimmer of determination, a resolve that had been tempered by the long hours of quiet communion with his memories and the hopes of a community ready to embrace change. The intensity of his gaze softened in the gentle light, as if acknowledging that the raw, unyielding forces of the past were slowly giving way to a more nuanced understanding of what it meant to rebuild and renew. Throughout Highland Grove, the once stifling tension had given way to a calm expectancy. Marjorie, whose tireless care had served as the backbone of the cafe throughout the night, moved with a measured grace that bordered on ritual. Every step she took was deliberate, each movement imbued with the knowledge that her humble establishment was not merely a place of commerce, but a sanctuary for hearts battered by life's harsh tempests. With quiet determination, she arranged the freshly prepared pastries and refilled cups with steaming coffee, each act an unspoken ode to the continuity of life even in the aftermath of discord. The familiar clink of porcelain and the soft murmur of subdued conversation created a gentle cadence, one that harmonized with the rising murmur of hope throughout the room. Jonas Reed, who had spent the long hours in contemplative solitude by the fogged window, now observed the subtle changes in the atmosphere with a thoughtful serenity. His presence, marked by the quiet dignity of a man who had witnessed both the depths of despair and the heights of possibility, lent an air of measured optimism to the unfolding scene. As he watched the interplay of light slowly erasing the lingering shadows, he could almost discern the faint outlines of a new beginning, a tapestry woven from the threads of shared experiences, collective resilience, and the silent yet potent determination to move forward. In the mirrored reflection of the window, he saw not only his own weathered countenance, but also the emerging silhouettes of neighbors and friends, each silently acknowledging that the moment had come to let go of the burdens of yesterday. Outside, the town of Ashbourne began to stir with a cautious energy. The narrow cobblestone streets, long shrouded in the quiet solitude of night, now vibrated with the soft murmur of early risers and the tentative footsteps of those drawn to a burgeoning day. The crisp air carried with it the faint scent of dew and the promise of transformation, a reminder that even the most scarred landscapes could be reborn under the gentle caress of dawn. Every building, every alley, seemed to share in the silent celebration of a community poised on the edge of a profound metamorphosis, ready to step into a day that held the promise of healing and renewal. Within Highland Grove, the subtle metamorphosis continued unabated. The lingering traces of earlier tensions, once as tangible as the defiant presence of the steel raptors, had now receded into a background murmur, a fading memory to be supplanted by a collective focus on the future. Donovan Black and his cohorts had long since withdrawn into the obscurity of night, leaving behind only the echo of their defiant footsteps and a lingering question of what their next move might be. Their absence was felt not as a void, but as a quiet space into which the community could now pour its unspoken yearnings for peace and a new beginning. In that space, the denizens of Ashbourne found themselves drawn together by a shared desire to redefine their collective destiny. The silent communion among the patrons of Highland Grove, those who had gathered to witness the transformative power of the night, became a living testament to the fact that even the deepest scars could be mended by the steady pulse of hope and the unwavering will to forge a brighter tomorrow. Each individual, from the steadfast guardian in the corner to the reflective newcomer at the window, contributed to a subtle symphony of renewal, a harmonious blend of memories, regrets, and the resolute promise to rise above adversity. As the early morning light filtered more fully into the cafe, it revealed not only the enduring marks of the past etched into the very fabric of the establishment, but also the nascent signs of regeneration. The worn surfaces, once bearing the weight of many turbulent nights, now seemed to glow softly with an inner light, a light that spoke of quiet endurance and the possibility of transformation. In every smile exchanged, in every gentle nod, there resided a tacit acknowledgement that the challenges of the previous day had, in their own way, paved the path toward a future defined by unity and resilience. Ethan's gaze, now drawn to the faces of those around him, held an unspoken dialogue with each individual. In his steady, unyielding look, there was the silent assurance that he too was prepared to contribute to the collective journey toward healing. The scars he bore, visible and invisible, were not symbols of defeat, but emblems of survival and the hard-won wisdom that comes from confronting the darkest hours of one's life. In his measured demeanor there existed a quiet defiance, a refusal to let the memories of past battles dictate the course of the future. Instead, he embraced the possibility that from the ashes of old conflicts, a new, more compassionate chapter could emerge. As the morning advanced, Highland Grove began to fill with a gentle activity reminiscent of a community rediscovering its rhythm after a long period of silence. The clatter of cups, the soft laughter of reunited friends, and the steady cadence of purposeful footsteps all contributed to a rising tide of optimism. Even the subtle patterns of sunlight dancing across the cafe's time-worn interior appeared to celebrate the arrival of this new day, a day imbued with the promise that every ending could give rise to a new beginning. The atmosphere, once charged with tension, now resonated with a tender hope, a delicate balance between remembrance and the transformative power of collective action. In the gentle unfolding of the morning, every element of Ashbourne's collective memory seemed to converge upon this singular moment, a moment that was both an homage to the trials of the past and a beacon for the future. The quiet determination of each individual in Highland Grove contributed to an intricate mosaic of shared experience. The community's resolve, which had been tested by the long hours of night and the weight of bygone conflicts, now shone through in the soft radiance of a new dawn. The silent, unspoken covenant between those gathered was clear. The legacy of pain would not be allowed to define them, nor would the memories of discord cast a permanent shadow upon their collective spirit. Outside the sanctuary of the cafe, the town of Ashbourne began to awaken fully. The gentle chorus of birds heralded the arrival of daybreak, their melodies merging with the soft murmur of conversation that now filled the streets. The interplay of natural beauty and human resilience was evident in every detail. The dew-laden leaves that glistened in the morning light, the reflective surfaces of the ancient buildings that bore witness to decades of history, and the subtle, almost imperceptible smile on the lips of those who had long endured the weight of unspoken sorrow. Together, these elements wove a narrative of hope, a testament to the enduring truth that from even the deepest trials, the seeds of renewal can take root and flourish. Within Highland Grove, as the morning matured, the narrative of Ashbourne's transformation continued to unfold with a quiet majesty. The community, having weathered the tumult of the previous day, now stood poised at the threshold of a future filled with both promise and the possibility of profound change. The journey toward healing was far from over, but in that fragile moment of shared morning light, every heart present felt an undeniable surge of collective strength, a determination to rise together, to rebuild what had been broken, and to embrace a destiny reimagined by the unyielding power of hope. Thus, in the tender glow of early daylight, Highland Grove and the town of Ashbourne began a new chapter, a chapter written not in the ink of despair, but in the vibrant hues of resilience, compassion, and the steadfast belief that every new dawn carries within it the promise of transformation. The narrative of this storied place, etched deeply into its walls and whispered among its people, was being rewritten in a language of unity and rebirth, a language that would carry the legacy of past struggles forward into a future defined by quiet courage and the unbreakable bonds of community. As the morning advanced into a day rich with the vibrancy of renewed purpose, the transformation of Ashbourne and its beloved Highland Grove became ever more evident. In the gentle bustle that replaced the quiet introspection of early dawn, the town stirred with an energy that was at once hopeful and determined. The air, crisp and imbued with the subtle fragrance of blossoming lilacs and damp earth, seemed to carry whispers of promises made and futures envisioned, a silent pact between past struggles and the bright canvas of what lay ahead. Ethan Cole, who had borne the heavy mantle of his storied past with a dignified calm, now rose from his habitual corner seat. The measured steps he took toward the counter resonated as both an affirmation of his enduring strength and a signal to those around him that the time for passive endurance was over. His presence, once cloaked in the quiet solemnity of remembrance, now took on the purposeful stride of a man determined to lead by example. Each step he took was a deliberate gesture toward reclaiming not only his own identity, but also the spirit of a community that had long weathered storms of discord and despair. Marjorie, whose vigilant care had held Highland Grove together through the longest hours of night, now moved with a renewed grace that was at once both gentle and resolute. In the soft, golden light that filtered through the cafe's time-worn windows, her eyes shone with a quiet pride as she arranged the day's first offerings on the counter. Every cup of steaming coffee, every slice of freshly baked bread, was imbued with an unspoken understanding that the simple rituals of life could serve as the very bedrock of recovery. With each careful motion, she nurtured the fragile seeds of community trust and belonging, seeds that, nurtured by time and hope, would soon blossom into something enduring and transformative. Jonas Reed, who had spent the twilight hours in reflective solitude by the fogged window, now emerged as a silent observer of the day's unfolding narrative. His gaze, still carrying the weight of past battles and hard-won lessons, now softened into a look of measured optimism. From his vantage point, he saw not only the tangible signs of regeneration, the gentle hum of conversation, the clink of porcelain, the rustle of newspapers, but also the intangible bonds forming between the people of Ashbourne. In each exchanged smile and every nod of understanding, he perceived the stirring of a collective will to overcome old wounds and write a new chapter in the town's enduring saga. Outside Highland Grove, Ashbourne itself had awakened to a symphony of sound and light. The cobblestone streets, cleansed by a light morning mist, echoed with the steady cadence of footsteps and the soft murmur of voices as neighbors greeted one another with tentative warmth. Shopkeepers dusted off their windows, their displays a vibrant testament to resilience in the face of adversity. In every corner of the town, from the modest market square to the narrow alleyways lined with ivy, there existed an unmistakable pulse of life, a pulse that beat in time with the newfound resolve of a community ready to leave the scars of the past behind. In the midst of this vibrant tableau, subtle yet significant shifts unfolded. The memory of the steel raptors, their defiant silhouettes and the echo of their engines, had not vanished, but had instead been absorbed into the collective narrative as a reminder of challenges overcome. Donovan Black and his crew, once figures of raw intimidation, were now recast in a different light, symbols of an era marked by conflict, whose shadows only served to make the present glow brighter with possibility. Their departure, though laden with unspoken tension, left behind a space into which the citizens of Ashbourne could pour their dreams and aspirations without the burden of lingering fear. Within Highland Grove, the interplay between memory and aspiration deepened as the day wore on. Conversations grew more animated, as if the shared recollections of past hardships had evolved into a common language of hope and determination. Elders recounted tales of earlier times, stories of struggle, sacrifice, and quiet heroism that wove together the diverse threads of the town's history into a rich tapestry of identity. Youngsters, their eyes alight with the fervor of unbridled possibility, listened intently, their hearts stirred by the promise that they too could contribute to the community's renaissance. In these intergenerational exchanges, the very essence of Ashbourne was being redefined, a living narrative that transcended the boundaries of age and experience. Ethan's own internal journey, however, was far from over. As he stepped outside Highland Grove into the welcoming light of day, he paused for a moment at the threshold, both literal and metaphorical, between his past and the future he was determined to shape. In the quiet that accompanied this pause, he allowed himself to reflect on the long, winding road that had led him back to Ashbourne. Every scar, every memory, was not a mark of defeat, but a chapter in a saga of resilience. It was the kind of journey that demanded the merging of strength with vulnerability, discipline with compassion, and the courage to confront not only external adversities, but also the inner demons that had haunted him through years of conflict. In that silent interlude, his eyes glimmered with the realization that his purpose was now intertwined with that of his community, a shared destiny to rise from the ashes of turmoil and reclaim the dignity that had once defined their lives. The town, too, seemed to sense this pivotal moment. In the interplay of sunlight and shadow, of old stone and new hope, Ashbourne exuded a palpable energy, a declaration that the trials of the past would not dictate the future. Each building, each street corner became a stage upon which the drama of renewal was played out. Neighbors exchanged words of encouragement, and the laughter of children mingled with the soft strains of a town coming together in collective celebration. The very air shimmered with possibility, as if every molecule vibrated with the promise of transformation. In the quiet aftermath of the night's introspection, Highland Grove emerged not only as a sanctuary, but as a beacon, a tangible symbol of what could be achieved when a community united to forge a new path forward. The cafe's walls, etched with the echoes of countless stories, now resonated with the hopeful cadence of a future being born out of shared resolve. In this space, the interplay of light and life, of memory and hope, was a living testament to the unbreakable bonds that held Ashbourne together. As the day unfolded in a cascade of gentle moments and decisive actions, the narrative of Ashbourne entered a phase of active transformation. Plans were whispered, dreams were reimagined, and every individual contributed, in their own quiet way, to the ongoing tapestry of recovery. The legacy of past conflicts, once a heavy shackle, was gradually reinterpreted as the very foundation upon which new strength could be built. In the faces of those who gathered, in the warmth of shared glances, and in the soft cadence of renewed dialogue, there lay an unspoken truth, that even the deepest wounds could heal when met with the unyielding force of community spirit. Thus, as Ashbourne embraced the bright promise of this new day, the spirit of Highland Grove and its people surged forward, a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of unity. The path ahead, though uncertain in its twists and turns, was lit by the steady flame of collective determination, a flame that would continue to guide them toward a future defined not by the shadows of past adversities, but by the luminous promise of rebirth and renewal. As the day matured into a vivid afternoon, the town of Ashbourne and its cherished Highland Grove found themselves standing at the zenith of transformation, a moment when the old and the new converged in a singular declaration of hope and renewal. In this culminating phase, every facet of the community seemed imbued with an electrifying vitality. The gentle murmur of voices, the harmonious clink of cups, and the soft cadence of footsteps echoed as a resounding anthem for the rebirth of a town that had once been haunted by the specters of conflict. Ethan Cole, whose life had been a tapestry of battles both external and internal, now moved through the revitalized streets with a purpose that radiated from every measured step. The weight of his past, etched into the lines of his face and the quiet resolve of his gaze, had, over countless moments of introspection, transmuted into a luminous strength. He strode purposefully from Highland Grove, not as a solitary veteran burdened by memories, but as a beacon of resilience, a living bridge between eras. His presence, marked by the scars of former trials and the unyielding spark of redemption, inspired those he encountered. Neighbors who had once hidden behind caution now greeted him with sincere nods and expressions of shared pride. Outside, Ashbourne itself had been remade in the transformative crucible of collective will. The cobbled streets, once steeped in the melancholic remnants of bygone hardships, now shimmered beneath the bold hues of daylight. New murals, vivid tapestries of community lore and personal triumph, adorned the facades of weathered buildings, each stroke of paint symbolizing the reclamation of lost dignity. Shopkeepers, with renewed vigor, arranged displays that told stories of perseverance, while the town square thrummed with the energy of vibrant conversations and spontaneous gatherings. The legacy of the Steel Raptors, once cast in the harsh shadows of intimidation, had been reinterpreted as a reminder that even the most formidable adversaries could serve as catalysts for profound change. Within Highland Grove, the transformation was both visible and deeply felt. Marjorie, the steadfast guardian of this beloved refuge, now presided over the space with an aura of gentle authority. The cafe, long a silent witness to the ebb and flow of communal life, pulsed with the dynamic interplay of memory and innovation. Every detail, the rustic wooden counters, the faded photographs of yesteryears, the well-worn armchairs, spoke of a narrative that had transcended mere survival. In the warmth of the renewed establishment, patrons exchanged stories that celebrated both individual courage and the power of unity. The subtle fragrance of freshly ground coffee mingled with the delicate scent of wildflowers carried in by the spring breeze, a sensory reminder that life's beauty often arose from the remnants of pain. Jonas Reed, whose quiet observations had provided a reflective counterpoint throughout the long hours of night and dawn, now emerged as an active participant in the town's collective renaissance. With his thoughtful gaze scanning the bustling scene from a restored window seat, he chronicled the metamorphosis of Ashbourne as if transcribing a sacred text. Every shared smile, every tentative handshake, resonated with the understanding that the journey toward healing was a mosaic assembled piece by piece through acts of kindness, courage, and forgiveness. In his reflective silence, he noted that the transformation was not instantaneous, but the result of an intricate interplay of countless small moments, a continuous, organic evolution of spirit that defied the linear constraints of time. The narrative of Ashbourne had reached an inflection point where past grievances had finally begun to dissolve into the broader mosaic of communal resilience. Neighbors who had once been estranged by the scars of distrust now found themselves working side by side in community gardens, painting murals that chronicled their shared history, and organizing town meetings where every voice mattered. The revival of local traditions, seasonal festivals, spirited parades, and the reestablishment of long-forgotten rites further anchored the town in its newfound identity. In these everyday rituals, the legacy of past conflicts transformed into a celebration of life itself, a testament to the enduring truth that even the deepest wounds could, over time, heal and blossom into symbols of hope. Ethan's internal journey, too, had reached a quiet culmination. He reflected on the long, arduous path that had brought him back to Ashbourne, the battles fought on distant shores, the silent wars waged within, and the gradual reawakening to the simple yet profound truths of home. In the interplay of light and shadow that danced along the walls of Highland Grove, he recognized that true strength was not found in the physical scars of combat, but in the quiet mastery over one's own destiny. His eyes, once shrouded by the weight of unspoken sorrows, now shone with the clarity of purpose, a luminous resolve that affirmed that the future could be rewritten, and that each new day carried the promise of renewal. The journey ahead, though still uncertain and fraught with challenges, was now illuminated by the collective spirit of a community that had learned to rise above fear and division. As the afternoon waned and the town prepared to welcome the gentle embrace of evening, a grand celebration unfurled in the heart of Ashbourne. The town square, meticulously adorned with strings of twinkling lights and colorful banners, became the stage for a communal festival that encapsulated the spirit of rebirth. Music, soft yet insistent, flowed from every corner as local musicians performed timeless melodies interwoven with the vibrant pulse of modern hope. Families gathered, neighbors embraced, and for a fleeting moment, the legacy of past adversities seemed to dissolve into the warm glow of shared joy. In that luminous interlude, the citizens of Ashbourne collectively affirmed that their future would be defined not by the remnants of old conflicts, but by the boundless potential of unity, empathy, and the enduring strength of community bonds. Highland Grove, the sanctuary that had witnessed the unfolding of so many chapters in the town's saga, stood as a silent testament to the transformative power of perseverance and grace. Its weathered facade and storied interior now bore not only the marks of history, but also the hopeful inscriptions of those who had dared to dream of a better tomorrow. Within its hallowed walls, every shared story, every act of quiet defiance against despair, contributed to a tapestry of renewal, a living chronicle of a community reborn. The cafe's patrons, their faces illuminated by the gentle radiance of candlelight and the soft glow of dawn's residual hues, recognized that their collective journey had reached a pivotal juncture. They had traversed the long, winding road from conflict to concord, and in doing so had discovered that the true essence of strength lay in the ability to forgive, to rebuild, and to cherish the fragile beauty of human connection. In the final moments of this unfolding day, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in a mesmerizing array of oranges and purples, Ashbourne embraced its destiny with an open heart. The transformation was complete in spirit, a metamorphosis that had touched every corner of the town, every soul within its midst. The legacy of sorrow had been transmuted into a celebration of life, a collective vow that the bonds of community could transcend the divisions of the past. Ethan, Marjorie, Jonas, and countless others had become living embodiments of this new era, guiding lights in a landscape reborn from the ashes of discord. As darkness settled gently over the town once more, the stars emerged in the velvet sky like scattered jewels, each one a silent witness to the triumph of hope over despair. In the stillness of that profound night, Ashbourne and its people reaffirmed their commitment to the path of transformation, a journey that was ongoing and ever-evolving. The narrative, which had been written in the ink of adversity and revised with the passion of renewal, now promised that every challenge would be met with the unyielding courage of a community united. In the quiet majesty of that starlit moment, the legacy of Highland Grove shone brightly as a beacon of resilience, a reminder that the human spirit, when nurtured by the bonds of unity and hope, could indeed illuminate the darkest of nights. Thus, as the final chapter of this unfolding saga came into being, the town of Ashbourne stepped confidently into its future, a future defined not by the remnants of conflict, but by the luminous promise of rebirth, compassion, and the enduring power of a united community.